The last person I expected to see smirking at my grandmother's funeral was my cousin Hannah, yet there she stood in her designer black dress, whispering to a man in an expensive suit while shooting triumphant glances in my direction. My name is Joanna, and I should have known something was wrong the moment Hannah volunteered to handle all the funeral arrangements. My grandmother raised me after my father died, but I'd been away in Seattle for work when she passed. Now, standing in the funeral home, surrounded by familiar faces wearing unfamiliar expressions, everything felt off. "Did you hear about the farm?" Summer grabbed my elbow, pulling me aside. Her eyes were wide with concern. "Hannah sold it yesterday. The papers were signed this morning." "What?" I nearly dropped my purse. "That's impossible. Gran would never sell the farm." "Well, apparently she did. Hannah showed everyone the paperwork last week. Said your grandmother signed everything over to her before—" Summer trailed off, glancing at the closed casket. I pushed through the crowd toward Hannah, who was now chatting with Vincent, the buyer she'd apparently found. My hands were shaking. "Hannah, we need to talk." She turned, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Joanna, darling, I was just telling Vincent about the property's history." "What's this about you selling the farm?" I demanded. "Gran would never—" "Oh, but she did." Hannah pulled a folder from her designer bag. "Everything's perfectly legal. See for yourself." The documents looked official, but something about Gran's signature seemed wrong. The flourish at the end of her name was missing, the little curl she always added, even when her hands shook from arthritis. "This isn't right," I said. "Where's the original will?" "The will?" Hannah laughed softly. "There wasn't one, dear. That's why everything defaulted to next of kin, me. But I lived with her. I helped run that farm for years before you abandoned her for your fancy job in Seattle." Hannah's voice carried just enough for nearby mourners to hear. "Face it, Joanna, you weren't there when it mattered." I felt a hand on my shoulder. Spencer, my oldest friend, and thankfully, a lawyer. He'd been studying the papers over my shoulder. "These documents need to be verified," he said quietly. "The timing seems convenient." Hannah's smile faltered for just a second. "Everything's been filed and processed. The sale is final." But as I watched her walk away, I remembered something that made my heart race. Last Christmas, Gran had pulled me aside after dinner. "Check behind the painting in my bedroom," she'd whispered. "The one of the sunflowers. Promise me you will." I hadn't understood then. But now, watching Hannah celebrate her victory at our grandmother's funeral, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The sunflower painting hung exactly where it had for the past 20 years. I waited until the last mourners left before slipping into Gran's bedroom, my heart pounding against my ribs. "We shouldn't be here," Spencer whispered, keeping watch at the door. "The house technically belongs to Vincent now. Give me 2 minutes." I carefully lifted the painting off its hook. There, taped to the back, was a sealed envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Oh my God," the words came out as a whisper. "Spencer, look at this." He crossed the room and took the document from my shaking hands. "This is a will. Dated 3 months ago, properly witnessed and notarized." His eyes widened as he scanned the contents. "Joanna, she left you everything. The farm, the house, even her antique collection." "But Hannah said—" Hannah lied. Spencer's voice was hard. "These signatures on the sale documents, they're dated after your grandmother was already in the hospital, barely conscious." A noise from downstairs made us both freeze. Footsteps approached, and Hannah's voice drifted up the stairs. "I know you're up there, Joanna." Her heels clicked on the wooden steps. "Snooping around already?" I clutched the will to my chest as she appeared in the doorway, still wearing that smug smile. "Find anything interesting?" she asked. "You forged Gran's signature," I said. "You sold property that wasn't yours to sell." Hannah's smile didn't waver. "Prove it. Vincent's already moved in. The money's been transferred. You really think anyone's going to believe you found some mysterious will behind a painting? The notary will confirm it's real." "The notary might not remember. People are so forgetful these days." She examined her manicured nails. "Besides, who was there for Gran in those final months? Not you. You were too busy with your career to care." "I called her every day." My voice cracked. I sent money for her medications. Money isn't the same as being there. Hannah stepped closer. Face it, cousin. You lost. I won. And if you try to fight this, I'll make sure everyone knows how you abandoned her. Spencer cleared his throat. Actually, Hannah, as Joanna's lawyer, I should inform you that forgery and fraud are serious criminal offenses. Hannah's smile finally faltered. Lawyer? You're just her high school friend who passed the bar, who specialized in estate law, he corrected, and who's recording this entire conversation on his phone. The color drained from Hannah's face. For a moment, she looked exactly like the little girl who used to steal my toys at family gatherings, caught and desperate. You want to fight? Her voice shook with rage. Fine. Let's see how well your mysterious will holds up in court. Summer spread the old property deeds across her kitchen table, coffee cups balanced precariously between yellowed papers. After 3 hours of searching, my eyes burned, but I couldn't stop. Look at this! Summer jabbed her finger at a clause in the original deed. Any sale of the property requires explicit consent from all living direct descendants of the original owner. That's me, I breathed. I'm Gran's only direct descendant through my father. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Summer peeked through the curtains and swore under her breath. It's Vincent, and he looks angry. I opened the door before he could ring again. Vincent's face was red, his expensive suit wrinkled. You're causing a lot of trouble, young lady. Hannah warned me about you. Did she warn you about the forged documents? I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me, or about the legal requirement for my consent on any sale. What consent? The papers are ironclad. The papers are fraudulent, Spencer's voice came from behind Vincent. He walked up the steps, briefcase in hand. And I've just confirmed with the hospital that Mrs. Nichols was in a medically induced coma on the date these documents were supposedly signed. Vincent's face went from red to pale. That's impossible. I had my lawyers check everything. Hannah's good at covering her tracks, I said, but not good enough. How much did you pay for the farm? $2.5 million, he whispered. Summer gasped behind me. She'd opened the door to listen. Hannah sold it for that much? The property's worth at least $4 million with the new highway development. Vincent sat heavily on the porch steps. I've already started renovations, invested another $500,000. I'm sorry, I said and meant it, but Hannah had no right to sell you something that wasn't hers. My phone buzzed, a text from Dwayne, Hannah's brother. Need to talk. Have something you should see. Meet at the diner? Go, Spencer said, sitting next to Vincent. I'll explain the legal options to Mr. Miller. Summer and I can keep digging here. 20 minutes later, I slid into a booth across from Dwayne. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes. Hannah's done this before, he said without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. 3 years ago, with our uncle's boat dealership. She forged papers while he was in rehab, sold everything, and vanished with the money. He killed himself 2 months later. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and a suicide note that had never been made public. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Dwayne's eyes filled with tears. Because this time I can't let her get away with it, and because there's something else you need to know about the day Gran died. Hannah was there that day. Dwayne's voice cracked. She went to the hospital while Gran was still conscious. They argued about the will. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I gripped my coffee cup. What happened? Gran threatened to expose Hannah's past frauds, said she had proof in her safety deposit box. Dwayne wiped his eyes. Hannah. She tampered with Gran's medication. The nurses found the IV line disconnected an hour later. My cup clattered against the saucer. Are you saying... I can't prove it, he interrupted quickly. But Gran slipped into the coma right after Hannah's visit. She never woke up. The bell above the diner door chimed. My mother Fiona stormed in, making a beeline for our booth. Her face was flushed with anger. You coward, she spat at Dwayne. Running to Joanna instead of facing your sister? Mom, sit down, I hissed. People are staring. She slid in beside me, hands shaking. Hannah just called me crying about how you're trying to ruin her. Said you're making up lies. Like she made up the sale documents? I pulled out my phone, showing her Spencer's photos of the signatures. Look at these dates, Mom. Look at Gran's signature. Fiona's anger faltered as she studied the images. But the hospital records show that Gran was unconscious, Dwayne finished. Hannah forged everything, just like with Uncle Rick's business. Rick? Mom's voice rose. What does Rick have to do with this? I passed her the folder. She read in silence, her face growing paler with each page. When she reached the suicide note, she closed the folder and pushed it away. All these years, she whispered. We thought Rick just couldn't handle losing the business. Hannah told us. She said, she's been lying to everyone, I said softly. And now she's done it again. My phone buzzed. A text from Summer. Found something big in Gran's old files. Get back here now. I'm coming with you, Mom said, already sliding out of the booth. I need to know everything. Dwayne stood too. Me too. It's time I stopped protecting her. Back at Summer's house, we found her and Spencer huddled over a laptop. Spencer looked up, his face grim. We found emails, he said. Between Hannah and Vincent, they've been planning this for months. The sale, the renovations, it's all part of a bigger development deal. They're going to turn the farm into a luxury resort. But that's not the worst part, Summer added, turning the laptop toward us. Look who else was involved in the planning. There on the screen was an email chain that made my blood run cold. Hannah hadn't been working alone. She had help from inside our own family. Uncle Marcus? Mom sank into a chair. My own brother was in on this? The emails detailed everything. Marcus had been feeding Hannah information about Gran's health, helping coordinate the timing of the sale. He'd even suggested ways to keep me away during Gran's final days. The court date is set for tomorrow, Spencer said, straightening his tie. With these emails, the forged documents, and Dwayne's testimony. They'll destroy me for this, Dwayne interrupted, pacing the room. Hannah will never forgive me. Like she never forgave Uncle Rick? I stood up, anger finally boiling over. She watched him die, Dwayne. She watched Gran die. When does it end? The doorbell rang again. This time, it was Hannah herself, with Uncle Marcus right behind her. Family meeting? Hannah's smile was brittle. How sweet, plotting against me. We know everything. Mom stepped forward. About Rick, about Gran's medication, about the resort plans. Marcus went pale. Hannah, you said this would be clean. Just a simple property sale? Shut up, Hannah snapped. None of you can prove anything, and tomorrow in court you'll see exactly how much influence I have in this town. Really? Summer clicked a button on her laptop. Hannah's voice filled the room. The old bat won't sell, but once we adjust her medication, she won't be in any condition to stop us. Hannah lunged for the laptop, but Spencer blocked her path. That recording is already with the police, along with everything else we found. You're bluffing, Hannah's voice shook. Marcus, tell them they're bluffing. But Marcus was already backing toward the door. I never agreed to murder Hannah. This is over. Murder? She laughed hysterically. I was protecting our interests. That farm was wasted on her, on all of you. I had vision. Vision? I stepped closer. You killed our grandmother for money. You drove our uncle to suicide? And for what? A luxury resort? For everything, she screamed. I deserved everything, while you got the love, the attention, the inheritance. Ms. Sutton? 2 police officers appeared in the doorway behind Marcus. We need you to come with us. Hannah's face contorted. She looked around wildly but found no allies. Even Dwayne turned away. You'll regret this, she hissed as the officers approached. All of you. Tomorrow in court you'll see. I always win. But as they led her away, I saw something I'd never seen before in Hannah's eyes. Fear. Spencer touched my shoulder. Ready for tomorrow? I watched the police car drive away, thinking of Gran, of the farm, of all the years of lies. More than ready, I said. It's time for the truth. The courtroom fell silent as Hannah took the stand. She'd traded her designer clothes for a conservative blue suit, playing the role of the responsible family member perfectly. I only wanted what was best for the farm, she said, dabbing at her eyes. Grandmother was declining, confused. She agreed to the sale. Hannah's lawyer smiled smugly. And the witnesses to this agreement? Uncle Marcus was there. Hannah gestured to where he sat, squirming in the gallery. He saw everything. Spencer stood. Your Honor, I'd like to play an audio recording. Hannah's smile faltered as Marcus's voice filled the courtroom. I can't lie for you anymore, Hannah. I was never there. You forged those papers after she was unconscious. The recording continued, revealing their entire scheme. Hannah's face turned from pale to red as her own words condemned her. Objection, her lawyer shouted. This recording was obtained legally, Spencer interrupted, with Mr. Marcus's consent. We have more. He played the hospital security footage showing Hannah entering Grand's room, then the medical records showing the tampered IV line. Ms. Sutton, Spencer approached the stand. Would you like to explain why you visited your grandmother just hours before she mysteriously slipped into a coma? I was saying goodbye, Hannah whispered. Like you said goodbye to Uncle Rick? Dwayne stood up in the gallery. Tell them what really happened to his business, Hannah. Tell them what you did to him. Order! The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Dwayne, please sit down. But Hannah was cracking. He was weak. They were all weak. That farm was wasted on them, sitting there growing organic vegetables when it could have been making millions. So you forged the documents? Spencer pressed. Yes! Hannah screamed. Yes, I forged them. I forged everything. That stupid farm should have been mine. She should have left it to me. The courtroom erupted. Through the chaos, I watched my cousin's face transform as she realized what she'd done. Her confession echoed off the walls as the judge called for order. Your Honor, Spencer's voice cut through the noise. I'd like to present the legitimate will, properly witnessed and notarized, leaving the farm to my client, Joanna. Hannah slumped in the witness box. You don't deserve it, she whispered, but the fight had left her voice. No, Hannah, I stood up. You didn't deserve to take it by force. That's the difference. The judge cleared his throat. Given the evidence and Ms. Sutton's confession, I'm prepared to rule. But first, does the defendant have anything else to say? Hannah looked around the courtroom, at the family members who now stared at her with horror and pity. For a moment, she looked just like the little girl who used to chase butterflies with me in Grand's garden. I'm sorry, she whispered. But we all knew it was too late. In light of the evidence presented, this court finds the sale of the property null and void, the judge declared. The farm is hereby returned to its rightful owner, Joanna, as per the valid will. Furthermore, Ms. Sutton will face criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and the ongoing investigation into her grandmother's death. Vincent stood up. Your Honor, what about my investment? Ms. Sutton will be ordered to repay the full amount, plus your renovation costs, the judge replied. Mr. Miller, you are the victim of fraud here as well. Hannah was led away in handcuffs, her expensive suit wrinkled, her makeup streaked with tears. She stopped beside me. I hope you're happy, she spat. You've ruined everything. You ruined it yourself, Mom said, stepping between us. Every lie, every scheme, every person you hurt, that was all you, Hannah. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Summer pushed them back while Spencer handled the questions. Through the chaos, I saw Dwayne sitting alone on a bench, head in his hands. You did the right thing, I said, sitting beside him. Did I? He looked up, eyes red. She's my sister. I just sent my sister to prison. She sent herself there. You just told the truth. Vincent approached us, looking uncomfortable in his now rumpled suit. I've been thinking, he said. The renovations we started, they're good changes. Would you consider letting me invest? Properly this time? We could turn it into something special, something your grandmother would be proud of. Before I could answer, Summer rushed over with her phone. You need to see this. Hannah's other victims are coming forward. 3 more families, all with similar stories. Property fraud, forged documents, mysterious accidents. It's finally over, Mom whispered, hugging me. Your grandmother can rest in peace. But watching Hannah being driven away in a police car, I felt no triumph. Just a deep, aching sadness for what greed had done to our family. What will you do with the farm? Spencer asked quietly. I thought about Gran's last coherent words to me. Make it matter, Joey. Make it help people. I have an idea, I said, but I'll need help. Summer squeezed my hand. Whatever you need. We're all here, Mom added. Even Dwayne managed a small smile. Count me in. It's time to make things right. As we left the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass doors. I looked different somehow. Stronger, older, more like Gran. She'd fought her whole life to keep the farm in the family, to make it a place of growth and healing. Now it was my turn to continue her legacy, but in a new way. A way that would help heal not just our family, but others who needed it too. Let's go home, I said. And for the first time since Gran died, those words felt completely true. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh paint and newly turned earth as I unlocked the farm's front gate. Behind me, a small group of women carried boxes and bags toward the renovated farmhouse. Welcome to New Roots, I said, holding the gate open. Their faces showed the same mix of hope and wariness I'd seen in the mirror not long ago. Is it really free? One woman asked, clutching her daughter's hand. The program is fully funded, Summer explained, appearing beside me. 3 months of housing, job training, and legal support for women rebuilding their lives after fraud or financial abuse. Vincent walked out of the farmhouse, reviewing paperwork. His investment had helped transform the old buildings into something remarkable, while keeping Gran's original gardens intact. The greenhouse training program starts tomorrow, he said. We've already got orders from 5 local restaurants for organic produce. Mom called from the vegetable garden, where she was teaching 2 residents about sustainable farming. The sight of her covered in dirt, smiling again, made my heart swell. Joanna? Dwayne's voice startled me. He stood awkwardly by his car, holding a box. Hannah asked me to give you this. Inside were old family photos, letters, and a handwritten note. Hannah's prison sentence had just begun, but her words suggested something else was ending. I understand now, she'd written. What Gran built here wasn't just a farm, it was a sanctuary. Maybe you'll do it better than I ever could. She's starting therapy, Dwayne said quietly. Talking about Rick, about Gran, about everything. A commotion by the farmhouse drew our attention. Spencer was showing another group of women around, explaining the program's legal aid services. One resident was crying, hugging Summer. She just won her case, Summer explained later, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Got her house back from a fraudulent sale, just like you did. Except I had help, I said. Not everyone does. They do now. Spencer squeezed my hand. Gran would be proud of this. I looked out over the farm, at the restored buildings, the thriving gardens, the women unpacking their lives into fresh starts. In the distance, Gran's beloved sunflowers swayed in the breeze. You know what Gran used to say? I smiled at the memory. Sometimes the best revenge is growing something beautiful from the dirt someone left you in. A little girl ran past, chasing butterflies through the garden just like Hannah and I once did. But this time, the story would have a different ending. Welcome home, I whispered, to everyone and no one, and somewhere I felt Gran smiling back.